Welcome to HFY Codex. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for thrilling HFY adventures. Join us and be part of the journey. The trade that changed everything. The twin suns of Shentha 5 burned low in the alien sky as Cal Renner opened the rusty hatch of his trade shuttle. Dust swirled around his boots as he stepped into the open bazaar filled with strange smells, bright colors, and tall creatures with sharp eyes. Cal was just a simple human trader, nothing special. Just a man with a few crates of earth junk and one unopened bottle of vintage whiskey. He didn't expect trouble, or fame, or love. He only wanted to sell and leave quietly. He set up a table between a tent that sold plasma knives and another that displayed glowing stones. Most aliens ignored him, walking past with their long limbs and clicking languages. His small cardboard sign, "Earth Goods, Rare and Real," flapped in the dry wind. Nobody cared for old music, chips, or t-shirts. Cal sighed and leaned on his elbow, wondering if coming to Shentha 5 was even worth the fuel. That's when she appeared, tall, red-skinned, and glowing faintly under the fading suns. She walked like she owned the stars. 6 golden eyes blinked slowly as she approached, her robes trailing behind like fire. The other aliens stepped back. Some even bowed their heads. But Cal just raised one brow and said, "Can I help you, miss?" She studied him without blinking, then whispered, "Do you have anything that burns? Something old? Something with soul?" Cal hesitated, then reached under his table and pulled out a dusty bottle wrapped in cloth. "Old earth whiskey, aged 20 years, unopened. Strong stuff," he said casually. The woman gasped, her lips parting in surprise. "I will take it," she said. "Name your price," he shrugged. "I was hoping for 50 credits. But if you want to, I'll give you 500, in crystal form," she said quickly. Already reaching for a pouch, Cal's jaw dropped. "That's too much." "No," she said firmly. "This bottle will restore my family's honor." Before Cal could say anything else, she placed a golden emblem on the table and nodded once. The deal was made. She took the bottle, bowed low, and whispered, "You don't know what you've just done, but the stars will remember it." Then she turned and vanished into the crowd. Cal stood there in confusion, staring at the emblem on his table. Around him, silence spread. Then came the guards, 4 armored warriors with glowing spears surrounded him, shouting in a strange language. One of them scanned the emblem and pointed a clawed hand at Cal. "You gave the flame gift to Lady Yuzari, matron of House Vazari. You have made a sacred offering." "Wait, what?" Cal said, raising both hands. "I just sold her a bottle of whiskey. The flame gift is not just a drink," the guard said coldly. "It is a symbol of courtship, only offered to a noble matron in binding ritual." Before Cal could protest, the crowd parted again, and Lady Yuzari returned. This time, she was not alone. 3 alien women walked behind her, each beautiful in a different way. One wore armor and had scars across her arms, her gaze sharp and proud. Another was wrapped in silver cloth, carrying healing herbs and soft blue eyes. The third was younger, playful, with clever hands and a wicked smile. "These are my daughters," Lady Yuzari said calmly. "You gave me fire, human. Now by law and blood, you are to be presented to them." "What?" Cal stammered. "No. This is a mistake. I just wanted to sell. The old laws do not care for intent," Yuzari said. "Only action, and your action was pure." The 3 daughters stepped forward and bowed together. One by one, they spoke. "I am Jira, and I claim him for his courage," said the warrior. "I am Millie, and I claim him for his kindness," said the healer. "I am Kavoa, and I claim him for the story he didn't know he was writing," said the scholar. Cal stood frozen, caught between laughter and panic. The crowd clapped. The guard saluted and banners were raised. Somewhere, a horn blew. "Wait, wait, I'm not marrying anyone." Cal shouted, but no one listened. "Lady?" Yuzari smiled gently, then leaned close and whispered, "You gave us a future, human, and now all three of them call you husband." The daughter's declaration. Cal sat on a soft cushion that felt more expensive than his entire ship, Alien. Music played gently in the background, strange but calming. His eyes darted across the luxurious room, lit by soft crystal lights. Gold patterns covered the walls, and sweet perfume drifted through the air. It felt more like a royal palace than a prison, but he still felt trapped. The door slid open without sound, and in came all three alien daughters. They didn't look angry or shy. They looked calm, proud, like they were used to getting what they wanted. Jira, the armored warrior, stepped forward first. She placed her hand over her chest and bowed slightly. "You have shown courage in giving the flame gift," she said, her voice firm. "You now stand as our chosen, and we stand ready to accept." Cal blinked. "Wait, I never meant to propose to anyone." "You don't have to mean it," said Kavoa, the clever one. Already walking around him in circles, "You just have to do it." "And you did," she said with a teasing smirk. "I checked the law texts, page 4, paragraph 6. I was selling whiskey," Cal groaned, rubbing his temples. "Earth whiskey is sacred to Milazani matron culture. Millie, the gentle healer, added softly, it's a symbol of warmth, memory, and legacy, only shared in deepest union." "This is insane," Cal muttered. "I was just trying to make a few credits." "And now," Kavoa said, finishing his sentence, "you're worth more than all the credits in the galaxy." Lady Yuzari entered behind them, wearing a golden cloak. She looked tired but proud. "The council has recognized your offer," she said. "You are bonded unless you challenge it in ritual." "Ritual?" Cal asked. "What kind of ritual?" "A trial of selection," Jira answered. "You must prove your worth in 3 ways: strength, wisdom, and sacrifice. If you pass, the bond is sealed with honor," Yuzari added. "If you fail, you will be cast out, and our family will face shame." "So I either marry 3 alien princesses," Cal said slowly, "or get thrown off a planet and start a galactic feud." "Exactly," Kavoa nodded, "and you've already met me, so you know I can be very persuasive." Jira stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "We don't need weakness in our line, human. We need loyalty and fire." "I'm not a warrior," Cal said quickly. "I'm a trader. I sell socks and whiskey," Kavoa added with a grin. Later that day, Cal was taken to a training court hidden inside the villa. Jira began teaching him basic combat: how to move, how to hold a blade, how to breathe under pressure. Every swing of her sword sent sparks flying from the energy walls. She was fast and strong, and Cal struggled just to stay standing. "You move like a wounded robot," Jira said, "but you have fire in your heart. I can use that." In the healing room, Millie showed him how to sense energy. She placed his hands over a glowing crystal, guiding his breath. "This is the rhythm of life," she whispered. "Even your kind has it, just buried under noise." Her hands were warm, her presence peaceful. And for a moment, Cal forgot the weight on his shoulders. Kavoa, meanwhile, threw him into mental games, puzzle chambers, and logic tests. "Think, don't react," she said. "Knowing your enemy's mind is better than fighting them." She laughed every time he failed, but clapped when he surprised her. By nightfall, Cal collapsed on the floor of his guest room. Sore, confused, but strangely calm, he stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I'm not a hero. I'm not a prince. I'm just a guy who sold a bottle." The next morning, the villa gates opened, and a large hover chariot entered the courtyard. Out stepped Tzerka, the rival noble suitor with skin like polished steel and eyes that glowed red. He wore ceremonial armor and carried a war staff tipped with a molten crest. "I challenge the outsider," Tzerka roared. "Only a fool gives his bloodline too." A human cow was pulled forward by the guards as nobles from different houses gathered to watch. Jera stood beside him, whispering, "He means to humiliate you before the trials begin." "You can step back," but Cal didn't move. He stared at Tzerka, then at the daughters who had trained him. He was tired, confused, but something in his chest burned with quiet fire. "I accept," he said, his voice steady. The crowd gasped. The air went still, and Lady Yuzari placed a hand over her heart. The daughters looked at him with new eyes. Not as a mistake, not as a traitor, but as something more. Jera stepped forward and whispered, "Then let the trial begin." The challenge of fire and vow. The courtyard was silent as Cal stepped into the sacred ring of stone. The crowd had grown. Nobles from across the star system had gathered, dressed in flowing robes and shimmering armor. Above them, banners of House Vazari flapped gently in the wind. The trial of selection had officially begun. Cal stood in the center, dressed in ceremonial clothes made of woven silver thread. He looked calm on the outside, but inside, his heart pounded like thunder. Across from him stood Tzerka, twice his size, muscles like armor plates, his eyes glowing with hate. The first trial was strength. Jera stepped forward, armor gleaming, and placed a wooden training blade in Cal's hand. She looked him in the eye and whispered, "Do not. Fight like a warrior. Fight like a man who refuses to fall." Tzerka charged with a roar, his blade crackling with energy. Cal barely had time to block, the force of the impact sending him sliding across the stone floor. The crowd jeered, some laughed, but the daughters stayed silent, watching. Cal got up slowly. Pain shooting through his arm, he swung again, this time not to hurt, but to push Tzerka off balance. He used timing, not power, dodging instead of clashing. Each time he fell, he got up. Each time he was hit, he refused to stop. After the fifth knockdown, he stood up again, bloody lip and trembling hands. Tzerka raised his weapon for a final strike, but Cal stepped inside his guard and slammed the wooden sword against the noble's leg. Tzerka stumbled, shocked, and the crowd fell silent. The match was called. Cal had not won by force, but by outlasting a stronger foe. Jera walked forward and bowed to him, placing her hand over his chest. "You are stronger than you look." She said, "I would follow you into war." The second trial was wisdom. Kevo led him into the Hall of Echoes, a place filled with glowing orbs and shifting mirrors inside. The test was simple solve, the ancient riddle of the twin suns, but the challenge was hidden behind illusions. Memory traps and voices from the past. The air whispered lies in his ears. Visions of Earth, of failure, of fear. Cal closed his eyes, ignoring the tricks, and focused on what Kavoa had taught him. Truth is simple, but doubt is loud. He found the real sun orb hidden behind a shadow version and placed it in the center of the room. The mirrors shattered, the lights blinked once, and then the doors opened. Kavoa smiled for the first time without sarcasm. "You think like a flame in the dark," she said. "You make chaos nervous." The final trial was sacrifice. Millie waited in a quiet chamber filled with soft lights and soft music. A small alien child lay in a healing pod, barely breathing. "This child belongs to no house." Millie whispered, "To pass this trial, you must give up something that defines you." To heal a stranger, Cal looked down at the child, small, fragile, dying. "What do I give?" he asked. "Your choice," Millie said gently. "It must." Hurt Cal reached into his coat and pulled out a tiny silver box. Inside was a locket with a picture of his mother, the only thing he had left from Earth. He stared at it, heart aching. and placed it inside the healing core. The pod glowed bright blue, and the child began to breathe again. Millie placed her hand over his and said, "Your heart is not weak. It is rare." The trials were complete. Cal stood before the great circle of nobles, Lady Yuzari and her daughters. He was battered, bruised, and exhausted. But he stood tall. Tzerika stepped forward once more. Fury in his eyes, he shouted, "This human has no blood right, no power, no name." But before he could say more, Jera drew her blade and pointed it at him. "You had your chance," she growled, "and you lost." Millie stepped beside her, holding a flame blossom. Kavoa held the old law book, placing it in Cal's hands. One by one, the three daughters placed their sigils on his chest, binding him to their family. Lady Yuzari looked at the crowd and spoke with pride. "This man gave me whiskey, but gave my daughters far more courage, reason, and love." Thunder rolled across the sky as the stars seemed to shimmer above them. Cal looked at the three daughters, each one smiling, each one his future. He whispered, "I only meant to make a deal." And Jera whispered back, "You sealed a legacy. Asterisk husband of 3 worlds." Asterisk, the sun rose over the floating palace of House Vazari, casting golden light on its marble towers and hovering gardens. Inside the grand hall, Cal Renner stood between 3 royal daughters, no longer just a traitor, no longer just a stranger. He had passed the trials, survived the challenge, and now wore the ceremonial robe of a bonded noble. Alien nobles from all corners of the Milazani systems had come to witness the binding. But not all had come to celebrate. "Many still believe you are a mistake," Kavoa whispered to him as they stood on the platform. Cal gave her a crooked smile. "I've made a career out of being underestimated." Below them, the feast began. Bowls of glowing fruit, trays of roasted star beasts, and jugs of sweet dust wine flowed among the guests. Music from golden flutes filled the air. Dancers moved like fire and wind. But Cal watched everything with careful eyes, because something didn't feel right. Millie approached him quietly, her hands trembling slightly. "Something's wrong," she said. "The energy in the hall is off." Jera was already gripping her blade, her eyes scanning the shadows. Kavoa opened her wrist screen and began scanning frequencies. Then a sharp tone echoed through the chamber, and every light flickered. Suddenly, armed nobles from House Drexel rose from their tables, weapons drawn. Tzerika stepped forward once more, covered in obsidian armor and a burning crest on his chest. "You dare pollute the old bloodlines with a human," he snarled. "House Vazari will fall today." Screams filled the chamber, guards rushed forward, and chaos broke out. Yair leapt into battle, blades spinning like lightning, cutting through the ambush. Millie threw energy shields over wounded nobles, her soft hands glowing with power. Kavoa hacked into the defense grid, lowering the outer gates and sealing the traitors inside. Cal didn't run. He grabbed a plasma pole from the wall and joined the defense. Fighting beside the daughters who had chosen him, he wasn't the best fighter, but he knew how to protect. He shielded a young servant girl from a blast and pulled a wounded guard to safety. At the center of it all, Tzerika roared, charging toward Lady Yuzari with a spear raised high. Cal saw it happen like slow motion without thinking. He dove between them. Taking the blow across his back, he collapsed, gasping, pain lighting his spine on fire. But before Tzerika could finish him, a blast of pure golden light hit him from behind Tzeri's personal weapon, activated for the first time in decades. Tzerika crumpled to the floor, defeated not by a warrior, but by the matron he insulted. Silence fell again. The nobles stood in shock, then slowly began to clap. It wasn't just for Yuzari, or her daughters. It was for the human, bleeding on the floor, who had defended a royal house like one of their own. Later, Cal awoke in a healing chamber, wrapped in soft vines and blue mist. Millie sat beside him, her hands resting on his chest. "You scared me," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You saved my mother." Jira entered next, her armor scorched. Her expression soft for the first time. "I wanted a bondmate who would not break." She said quietly, "You are more than I expected." Kavoa followed, grinning, holding his old whiskey crate. "I told you one sail could change the galaxy," she said, placing the empty bottle beside him. "Guess I owe you a commission," Cal murmured with a smirk. The following day, the great binding was completed in front of all houses. Not just as a formality, but as a promise. Cal was no longer just a husband to 3 noble daughters. He was declared first consort of House Visari, the first human to ever hold the title. He stood on the palace balcony that night, watching the twin moons rise. Behind him, Jira, Millie, and Kavoa joined him, each touching his hand in turn. They were different, stubborn, fierce, but somehow they fit together. "I only came to sell some whiskey," Cal said, shaking his head. "And you sold it well." Kavoa replied, "You just didn't read the fine print." The stars shimmered. The winds carried music from the feast below. In a galaxy of strange laws and ancient customs, Cal had become a legend. Not by power or blood, but by kindness, grit, and a bottle of Earth's finest burn. Now all 3 daughters called him husband, and he called them home. The end.